Today we have some major updates for The Mandalorian Season 3, and we begin with the new interview that Dave Filoni gave with ET Online. He was asked if and when Grogu's gonna speak, and he replied it's coming sooner rather than later. This is huge, maybe even before the end of this season, and something many fans have been anticipating. But what will Grogu's first words be? I'll let you decide in the comments down below. Bear in mind though, he probably won't talk like Yoda, because Yoda spoke the way he did out of respect for his master. This is something Frank Oz told Dave Filoni. In The High Republic and Tales of the Jedi, Yaddle spoke normally, and so too will Grogu, as a product of his environment. Those around Grogu like Djarin speak normally, with a normal syntax in Galactic Basic, so we can expect him to follow suit and talk in the same way. In other news, the giant sea creature monster from Chapter 17, who emerged from the water, now has an official name. They've called it the Dinosaur Turtle. Make of that what you will. They've decided to go for a very Earth-like and simple appellation, and not something with a unique species name, as we typically see in Star Wars. But bear in mind, they also named the Sand Beast from the Book of Boba Fett in a similar way, something very simple, the Sand Beast or the Sand Ape. In other Mando news, Chapter 18, which drops on Wednesday, Season 3 Episode 2, is reportedly 42 minutes in length. That's without the intro and the credits, so a little bit longer than the Season 3 premiere. The Twitter account Cryptic4KCal, who shared numerous accurate runtimes in the past, reported that Episode 2 clocks in at 42 minutes and 24 seconds in length. This is 7 minutes longer than the season premiere, and there have been some leaks for the episode, which we're not really going to get into, but also some reviews. Right off the bat, people are saying that this episode is much better than the premiere. Now, I personally love Chapter 17, but to know Chapter 18 is reportedly better is amazing news. Here's what comicbook.com said. Episode 2 is incredible in every sense of the word. The Mandalorian lore is some of the most interesting storytelling in all of Star Wars, and boy howdy, Season 3 Episode 2 is such a delight, so great news there. Alex Zelban from Decider also shared a similarly positive reaction. Episode 2 is where it kicks into classic Mando and finds its groove. Regardless, gifable Grogu stuff in both episodes, and that's all that really matters. Obviously a little joke there at the end, but both are saying the next Mandalorian episode is top notch. And so now, my dear Mandalorians, Jon Favreau sat down with Film Stories to discuss what's to come in The Mandalorian's future, in Season 3 but also beyond. The interview is pretty lengthy, and there's a lot of stuff we've covered in the past, stuff he's already addressed, so I'm just going to cut it down to the meat and potatoes, and two things really stood out. First of all, he hopes to make a Season 5, and he's infatuated with this era of storytelling. He says it's not going to end anytime soon. We already know he's written Season 4, and that goes into production in October, but he's already thinking about Season 5. He says he hopes to do it, which means it's not for certain just yet, but he's out there living his best creative life and contributing so much to the pop culture landscape. During the interview, he praised Dave Filoni and expresses how immersive and huge Season 3 is going to get later on. In previous interviews, he also teased some big episodes with internet-breaking moments, and Rick Famuyiwa expressed the same, so there is a lot of confidence amongst the creatives that this season is going to deliver. And if Chapter 17 and what we've heard about 18 is anything to go by, they're certainly hitting the mark and exceeding our expectations. The premiere was an absolute banger. In a separate interview with Fade to Black podcast, Jon Favreau hinted that Salacious B. Crumb survived Jabba's skiff and might appear in The Mandalorian. We've already seen Kowakian monkey lizards on Navarro, but now we know that the original one from Return of the Jedi survived as well, and is residing presumably on Tatooine. As we saw in The Mandalorian Season 2 and the Book of Boba Fett respectively, Bib Fortuna and Max Rebo were other confirmed survivors. And we know Max Rebo might appear again in The Mandalorian Season 3. We know this after a crew badge leaked, showing him with the caption Max Rebo lives, but bear in mind, he didn't die in the Book of Boba Fett. He was not present at Garth of Whip's sanctuary when it exploded. He was taking the night off. So Max Rebo lives to play another day, and supposedly Salacious Crumb as well, although I don't know how he's going to play into the Mandalorian story. Imagine hearing that shrieking laugh once again. That would make my entire year. I love every callback to Return of the Jedi. Jon Favreau also opened up about creative decisions when exploring Mandalore and the Darksaber. They asked him the following: so you're interested in leaning into this idea of the fundamentalist aspect of what Mandalore is and its culture? And he replied, yeah, I think we look to say, how does this play out? You have one group that clearly believes one thing, another group that believes another, but that wasn't anywhere near Mandalore for all of this stuff during the Clone Wars, and there's Bo-Katan Kryze, who was there as part of the royal family. Who's right? Who's wrong? Which is the way? And then the Darksaber is in the midst of all of it, this symbolic totem that is magical. Does it create leadership? Is it something that's symbolic? Is it the will of the other Mandalorians to follow this thing? What does all of it mean? It has a tie together. What happened? Clearly the planet's not doing great. He says, up until this point, things have not been going wonderfully. Even in the Clone Wars, the planet wasn't looking so good from all the civil wars that were happening over centuries, so I think that becomes the inspiration. And how do you resolve these conflicts and trains that are heading towards each other on the same track? There were a lot of things we laid out during the first season, like why Mandalorians can't take off their helmets. A lot of people were confused and curious because we see lots of Mandalorians taking off their helmet in the Clone Wars and Rebels. And he insists they exist in the same reality, but a lot of time has passed, different factions have been created, and they want to explore that further. And by the sounds of things, the tribe was an offshoot of the Death Watch that was created in response to Mandalorians losing their way. So they're relatively new, an extreme religious Mandalorian cult that tries to establish tradition, or should I say re-establish it. Jon Favreau also says he was fortunate enough to work with people like George Lucas. He wants to keep that original legacy alive. In everything he and Dave Filoni work on, they want to try and keep it true to what Star Wars always was. And a lot of the time that means in what kind of things they draw influence from, various movies and central themes. Speaking on the future of the show itself, he said beyond the series, like beyond season 4, I hope so. I really love the dynamic of these two characters that in theory don't change. I think that there's a lot of potential energy in that relationship, especially as the baby is no longer a baby and starts to grow, but it happens so slowly that we really could play this out, hopefully for a while, but it all depends on the audience, if they like what we're doing. As long as they're digging it, we're digging making it, and it's a fun gig I don't want to walk away from anytime soon. Really, really awesome stuff. And so finally, my dear friends, in other Star Wars news, Michelle Lang, who voices Omega, and Simon Kassianides, who plays Axe-Woves, are now confirmed for Star Wars Celebration in April. After the Bad Batch Season 2 Episode 11, Omega is the talk of the town. There is a lot of scary stuff coming up, and as for Axe-Woves, he appears in a later episode of The Mandalorian Season 3, hopefully with Cosca Reeves. But with that said, guys, share your thoughts in the comments down below, and that brings us to the end of today's Star Wars news update. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and why not check out our Patreon. The link is down there in the description, where you get tons of videos not found here on YouTube. But until the next one, guys, may the Force be with you always.